My husband wouldn't forgive me due to a misunderstanding, and he served me divorce papers. 9 years later, he discovered the truth and came to my doorstep. I surprised him and told him to leave. I, a 38-year-old woman, went through a divorce with my husband Nick, who was 40, nearly 9 years ago. We had been married for 3 years, and he had been a good husband. However, due to a significant misunderstanding, he left me and served me with divorce papers shortly after. He didn't give me the chance to explain, and so the truth remained untold. I was deeply hurt by the speed at which he decided to leave, and I didn't contest the divorce. I used to be a housewife. One day, Nick came home to find my ex-boyfriend Joe, also 38, in the house with me. Joe and I had dated for just 3 months before I realized my feelings for Nick. Joe had visited to invite both Nick and me to his upcoming wedding, which was taking place in a few months. It was an innocent invitation, but Nick assumed the worst and left without a word. Despite my attempts to explain and stop him, Nick drove away and blocked me everywhere, cutting off all communication. Joe also tried to reach out to Nick to clarify, but he too was blocked. I spent the next 2 days in devastation, not knowing where Nick was. Even though I believed Nick would come back once his anger cooled off, that didn't happen. A few days later, he filed for divorce. Devastated and without the chance to explain, I decided not to fight for my marriage. I didn't contest the divorce, packed my things, and stayed with a friend until I found a job and could afford my own place. It took time, but I got my life back on track. Angry at Nick's behavior, I didn't allow myself to be depressed. Although hurt and betrayed, I knew I had to look out for myself. I got a job, eventually moved into my own apartment, and finalized my divorce. While I didn't get much out of it, I was content, eager to move on. I attended Joe's wedding a month after my divorce and enjoyed reconnecting with old college friends. Nick skipped the event, as expected, and people were surprised to learn about our separation. Despite the expectations for us to stay together forever, I was focused on rebuilding my life. Life took an unexpected turn, but attending Joe's wedding became the best decision I ever made. There, I met Chris, a 40-year-old man who is now my current husband, and we have a daughter together. Although sparks flew instantly during our conversation at Joe's wedding, I held back, having recently gone through a divorce. I exchanged numbers with Chris, but refrained from texting for a while, focusing on self-improvement. A year later, in a better mental space, I encountered Chris again at a work event, and I finally agreed to go on a date with him. 2 years later, we got married, and a year after that, we welcomed our almost 5-year-old daughter. Much time had passed since my divorce with Nick, and I had transformed into a new person. Imagine my shock when, out of the blue a few days ago, Nick appeared at my doorstep after all these years. I had no interest in finding out how he discovered my whereabouts because, truthfully, I couldn't care less. Over the weekend, both my husband and I were at home with our daughter when Nick showed up with a bouquet of roses, seemingly oblivious to the past. Nick explained that a few weeks ago, he learned from a friend that Joe was married to someone else, not me. He claimed to have realized he overreacted years ago and wanted a second chance. Stunned, I struggled to find words. It was absurd that he divorced me over a misunderstanding. And now, after 9 years of no contact, he believed he could talk his way back into my life. Despite his plea for forgiveness, I had no intention of granting him a second chance. Instead of shutting the door on his face, I opted for a more insulting response. I asked him to wait and return to the living room where my husband and daughter were waiting for me to come back. I didn't have time for explanations, so I lifted my daughter in my arms and motioned for Chris to follow me to the front door. You can imagine Nick's horror when he saw me approaching him with my daughter and my husband behind me. With a smile, I told him it was a bit too late for a second chance and asked him to leave. After a brief moment of silence, he turned around, ran to his car without a word, and drove away. I felt a sense of closure that I had been seeking for years. Once Nick was gone, I sat Chris down and shared the absurd encounter with him. We ended up having a good laugh over it. It seemed Nick was deluded to think I would take him back without questions after what happened 9 years ago. Chris believed Nick was so self-centered that he assumed I would wait around for him to come back someday, and it seemed like a pretty accurate assessment of his character. It's been a few days since then, and I hoped Nick would leave me alone. However, this morning, he sent me a message on Facebook from a new account, expressing hurt over my actions. He claimed to genuinely want to apologize for his past behavior, but felt I had made a mockery of the situation. He believed I owed him an apology as well for trying to humiliate him. Update: I decided not to respond to Nick's message. He didn't deserve my sympathy, forgiveness, or an apology. My husband was right. Nick assumed I would still be waiting for him and readily accept him back. Looking back, I realized I had overlooked red flags in Nick's behavior before marrying him. He was always self-centered, making it uncomfortable for me to be around other guys, even friends. He convinced me to quit my job and be a housewife, claiming he didn't trust anyone else to take care of our home. Despite my sacrifices, he didn't give me a chance to explain during our divorce. I had always sensed Nick's jealousy, especially regarding Joe, my first boyfriend in college. Nick was excessively possessive, despite having no reason to be, as I was with Joe before Nick. I always remained faithful to him, never even entertaining the thought of cheating on anyone. However, it was evident that he didn't hold me in high regard. After our divorce, I was deeply affected, and it took me a considerable amount of time to gather myself and give love a second chance. Some have pointed out that I might move from one relationship to another quickly, and while I can't deny it, I'm grateful for taking that leap of faith. Today, I have the best husband and a beautiful daughter, and I'm content with how my life has unfolded. I won't apologize to Nick, but I can acknowledge that I owe him thanks. If he hadn't left me, I might still be stuck in an unhappy marriage. Update 2. I discovered more about Nick. Apparently, he had deleted all of his social media, and for the past few years, he had been living in Seoul for work, losing touch with old friends, including those from college. He moved back a month ago, got in touch with a friend who knew about Joe's marriage but not mine, and that's how he ended up at my doorstep. It's still strange that he approached me after almost a decade of no contact, but I'm over it now. He hasn't texted me since I ignored his message, and I doubt he will. I informed Joe about the situation, and even he was surprised at Nick's audacity in showing up unannounced and expecting me to take him back, demanding an apology for the insult I delivered, mirroring what he did to me. I didn't disclose the truth to my daughter when she asked about the man, telling her he had the wrong address, which seemed to satisfy her curiosity. Update 3. Nick reached out to me again after almost a week of no contact. I realized I had forgotten to block him, which was a bit silly on my part. But given my busy schedule, I didn't dwell on it. In his text, Nick mentioned wanting to meet and discuss various things. He seemed to disregard my current life with a husband and daughter, insinuating that I might be open to cheating on my husband with him. A stark irony considering he left me for such reasons 9 years ago. I was utterly disgusted by his audacity and promptly blocked his number. I have no interest in having him back in my life, and his creepy messages only reaffirm that decision. Update 4. It's disheartening that some accuse me of still having feelings for Nick. I don't, but I do harbor strong negative emotions toward him for abandoning me after we were married. Of course, I shared the disturbing text with Chris, my husband, as I value transparency in our relationship. I am not a cheater, and I love Chris more than anything. The accusations are baseless, and I hope this clarifies my stance. Update 5. Nick returned, and this time I didn't open the door without checking first. My daughter was out with Chris to meet his parents, and upon realizing it was Nick outside, I firmly told him to leave, emphasizing he was not welcome. Despite this, he insisted on staying, mentioning his brief stay in town and suggesting we could be together. Appalled, I gave him 3 seconds to leave, threatening to call the police. When he didn't take it seriously, I followed through and contacted the authorities. They removed him from the premises. I'm relieved my daughter wasn't present, and I immediately informed Chris about the incident. I was fine, just a bit shaken by what happened. I couldn't understand how Nick had found out where I lived. The friend who informed him about Joe's marriage wasn't close enough to know about my current life, let alone my address. Now, I feel weird and uncomfortable in my own home, especially with my daughter's safety in mind. While I don't think he's a psycho, I wouldn't put it past him to escalate the situation. I'm fortunate that he's here for only a few more weeks, and I'm relying on that to keep him away. My husband and I are considering enhancing our security and seeking advice from his uncle, a police officer. The situation has taken a bizarre and creepy turn, and I don't want to stick around to find out what he might do next. Update 6. I discovered that a college friend had given Nick my address. She apologized profusely, acknowledging her mistake, but I'm still upset about the consequences. I haven't heard from Nick since the police escorted him off our property. However, we're contemplating a move, as we're unsure if he was truthful about his short stay. Despite our daughter's attachment to our current home, we're prioritizing safety. Update 7. Nick has moved to Canada, confirmed by multiple sources. He texted me once more, expressing delusional beliefs about our relationship. I blocked his new number, relieved that he's gone. Thankfully, we don't have to move, and our daughter is delighted to stay in her beloved home. We're maintaining security measures, though, just to be cautious. A vacation to the beach is planned to relieve the stress of the past weeks. I appreciate the love and support from everyone and look forward to sharing more stories from Argo relationships.